Good morning. I'm Bucks County DA Matt Weintraub, and I'm here to announce the recovery of Adam Brundage and also the arrest of Daman Smoot for his murder. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about Adam. He was a Quakertown resident, and he has been missing since 2004. He was a 26-year-old father of two, and he was very recently recovered in H&K Quarries, which is in the Chalfont area of Hilltown. H&K, I should note, was completely cooperative with us and couldn't have been better in their assistance of law enforcement. Adam Brundage, as we now know, was murdered on October the 4th of 2004. The defendant, who's been charged in his murder, Daman Smoot, hit him in the back of the head with a baseball bat, and then to ensure that he died, covered his nose and mouth until he was sure he was no longer breathing. Adam was buried at the quarry. He never had a funeral. He didn't have a grave marker, no epitaph, just a tomb in the rock. For 15 years. But I'm very, very proud and pleased to say that he will now be returned to his family for proper burial. And this was thanks to the incredible work of many, many people, but in particular, the assigned Assistant DA, Chief Prosecutor Jennifer Shorn, who's here with me, Quakertown Detective Matt Mulchan, who's also here with me. Where's Matt? Bucks County Detectives Rick Munger and Mike Walt. His killer is going to now be brought to justice. I'd like to talk about Daman Smoot for a minute. This reminds me of the story, The Talented Mr. Ripley. I know you'll probably have to search your memory banks. But in essence, Daman Smoot was jealous of Adam Brundage, who had come into a small but sizable inheritance. And in his jealousy, he wanted to become him. He wanted the things that Adam had and that Adam had access to. So he killed him. And he assumed his life in a way. He moved into his house weeks before murdering him, started driving his car, and using his things as though Adam's life were his own. Law enforcement very recently began applying new pressure to Daman Smoot, who was a suspect at the time of Adam's disappearance, until he agreed to cooperate with us. As a result, we learned how the defendant killed Adam Brundage and where he buried him. In exchange for his cooperation, we anticipate, but this will be up to the defendant, that the defendant will tender a plea to third-degree murder and receive a sentence of 20 to 40 years in the state correctional facility. He will be eligible for parole when he's 62 years old, first eligible. This investigation and recovery, as is almost always the case, was made possible once again by the cooperation and incredible skill, dedication, and talents of many, many agencies. The FBI Evidence Recovery Team, who we've now teamed up with on a regular basis. As you'll recall, we teamed up with them in the Soulbury homicides with great success. Quakertown Police Department, Hilltown Township Police Department, the Bucks County Detectives, Bucks County Coroner Meredith Buck, who's also present here, and her staff, Pennsylvania State Police Trooper Joe Carlson and his dog Jack, who was a cadaver dog in this instance. Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office, Montgomery County Detective's Office, our Bucks County Sheriff, Milt Worrell and his staff, and H&K Quarry, of course. I would also like to thank Emergency Services Management for providing us with fantastic resources so that we were able to not only dig, but dig all day and all night until we were able to recover Adam's remains carefully and safely and intact. The defendant has been arraigned. He has already waived his preliminary hearing this morning, and his bail has been set at $1 million cash bail. This gives me a chance to reiterate once again that this is another cold case murder solved by Bucks County District Attorney's Office and many in law enforcement and other agencies. This has been an incredibly collaborative effort. Another family has now been given answers about their loved one, and their long-lost loved one can be returned home. Another killer has been brought to justice. I was explaining in awe, myself in awe, the other day to one of my colleagues about how we were able to revive this investigation and bring it to a just conclusion, and that we had solved another cold case murder. And he commented to me, and I'll leave out the expletives, he said, if you murder somebody in Bucks County, don't sleep, because we will get you. And I fervently believe that, and I'm so proud. And like in the talented Mr. Ripley, the killers of unsolved Bucks County murder victims should be, as the book says, wondering whether he will see policemen waiting for him on every pier that he ever approaches. I would love to be known as the District Attorney's Office that solves cold case murders. That would be an incredible legacy. My message to our police throughout the county is, if you have a cold case murder, please bring it to us. Let's try to solve it. And my message to our victims who have lost loved ones to as yet unsolved cold case homicides, don't give up hope. That's all I have to say. I will take questions if you have them.
Have you talked to the Brundage family?
We have spoken with the Brundage family. They are very relieved. They're still processing this. They've, of course, we've consulted with them at every turn, including with the plea negotiations that we anticipate. And certainly if it doesn't go that way, we'd be prepared to go forward. But they're just relieved. They're very happy to have Adam be brought home.
Was the quarry searched back then?
I don't think so. No, it wasn't. And in fact, I will say this, that we were targeting a completely different area altogether as where we believed Adam was buried and located. And thanks to the defendant's cooperation, we knew exactly where to target.
What specifically reinvigorated the attention in this case back in April?
Good old-fashioned police work. Matt Molchan brought the case to Jen Shorn, who knew about it from when she was a young assistant DA. And they said, let's give this a go. We have enough evidence here. There's enough to go on that we can revive this and use certain extraordinary tools that are uniquely at our disposal to try to breathe new life into this investigation. And I'll be candid with you, Vinny, we've had plenty of recent success. This is the third cold case homicide that Jen Shorn has solved, along with other members of law enforcement. That just empowers us and reinvigorates us and encourages us to continue to do this in the future.
Well, what was it about? I mean, what did you think you saw in the cold case that would lead you to something?
There were, I can't get into too many specifics, but there were a lot of markers throughout the years that indicated that our suspicions that Daman Smoot was Adam Brundage's killer was accurate. And so we just really narrowed the focus onto Daman Smoot and continued to press and press and press until that compression yielded cooperation.
Smoot was already behind bars, right? And
yes.
What was he behind bars for?
I can't comment on that. Perhaps you can very easily learn of that if you do a search of the UJS portal, but I'm not allowed to comment on that.
How many times did you meet with him before he started to tell you what happened? You know?
Well, I can't say if he told us what happened, but perhaps you'll be enlightened to that fact. But we met with him the one time. One time.
How?
One time. And we took our shot, and we were successful.
What can you tell us about that other location, the investigation?
It was I'll say it was a farm, and it was acres and acres that we would have had to search. But instead, we were able to search another massive location, the quarry. I don't know, has a picture of that already been put up, which is another massive location. But thanks to cooperation and the cadaver dog that was employed, we were able to zero right in on where Adam was located. And then through an entire day and a night, we uncovered him and were able to extricate him from his grave.
You
Do you
mentioned
think
that
without that cooperation, sorry, do you think without that cooperation you would have found him?
No.
How difficult was finding that body? I mean, it's a huge area to search.
We had very specific information on where to look, incredibly detailed down to the specific location. And you can see in the inset picture that we're digging in a very, very specific location, and that it was that pole there. I don't know if it's a telephone pole, but that pole there was the frame of reference. And even 15 years ago, that was relatively untouched from when Adam was first buried there.
You mentioned that Damon was jealous of Adam, that they, I guess, had a relationship before the murder. Can you describe how they met and how long they had known each other?
They didn't know each other for very long, but it would appear that Daman Smoot wanted to take advantage of the things that Adam had and that he didn't. And he did, and it ultimately cost Adam his life.
So what was the motive behind this? Was it his inheritance from his father, or?
I can only speak to what occurred after the fact, and that is that Daman Smoot began to, little by little, assume Adam Brundage's life by moving into his house, by using his car, by using his things. And so if you backtrack from that, it was the allegation, as you'll see in the probable cause affidavit, is that they had an argument. But that was perhaps pretextual because of what happened after the murder, is the assumption of Adam Brundage's life by Daman Smoot.
So Smoot moves into his place prior to the murder?
No, I think it was it prior? It was.
Roommates about a month and a half prior to the murder.
They were roommates. And then he continued to maintain living there after Adam disappeared, for which we now know he was murdered.
Well, so Smoot must have been talked to at the time of the murder. He had to have been someone that they
Certainly.
interviewed and talked to and pressed a little bit.
But we didn't know that Adam had been murdered at that time. He was only missing at the time. We now know the truth. Anybody else?
At the preliminary arraignment, it was said that there's a third-degree murder deal in the works. Was there any conversation about first degree? Is there any evidence of premeditation?
I'll let you decide that for yourself, Jim, but I'm very satisfied, as is the family and everybody in law enforcement, that we made this agreement before we knew where Adam Brundage was located, where he was buried. And as I've stated, I don't think we would have ever found him without cooperation. And there's got to be a trade. There's a quid pro quo for cooperation, especially cooperation this valuable. And so you never know exactly what somebody may or may not tell you in exchange for that cooperation. And we were learning it for the first time the day that we sat and spoke with Daman Smoot, although I can't tell you exactly what he said because of the rules of professional conduct.
And it sounds obvious, but how important is it for the family to have that?
It's priceless. They have their son back. They have their father back. Imagine if you were in their shoes. I would never want to be, but I probably would trade anything to have one of my loved ones back after 15 years missing, parts unknown. It has to be a bittersweet feeling, but I think that they can now know that Adam will be resting in peace.
I just had two more if I could. So Smoot, you said, hey, look, we have specific digging. There we are, we're digging right there. Smoot tells you where we put the body, so you can dig right there, right?
I can't say that because of the rules, but you can draw your own inferences, Jeff, to that effect.
And the quarry is still active?
Yes.
So the body had been covered. It was deep. You had to go get it.
We had to do some extensive and careful digging to extricate Adam Brundage from the ground. I can say that he was not put there in his final resting place just merely with a shovel. That heavy equipment was used to bury him in his final resting place.
Does Smoot use the heavy equipment? Who operates the heavy equipment?
It's not, but he was a heavy machine operator until very prior.
I can say by way of background that Daman Smoot was known to be a heavy machine operator.
Was he an employee there?
He was, right? Yes, he was.
So he was an employee there who used heavy equipment, and you believe he may have used it to, obviously used it to put the body?
Well, I know I'm being circumspect, but I can't validate that, Jeff, unfortunately.
And did you need a search warrant or anything, or did the owners of the quarry say, go search?
We always like to be safe and prepared, so we did get a search warrant. We did.
We never had to sign it. We prepared one, but they ended up.
We did get a search warrant, but they were so cooperative, and they had no part in this murder or the desecration of Adam's body. So they allowed us. Not only did they allow us on the property, we were on the property for days, and they kept it secret and quiet, for which I'm very grateful. So we were able to work unbothered and unmolested by the public and frankly by the media, because we've experienced that in the opposite before. And it allowed us to extricate Adam from his grave and return him to his family. All right, I'm going to step away, but I understand that Mr.